Your father never told you he was proud of you. Or maybe he did, once, at a graduation or a wedding or some other moment where it was expected of him, and it felt like reading from a script, like the words were right, but the man saying them was somewhere else entirely, or maybe he never said it at all. Either way, you're still waiting, even now, even if he's been gone for years. Some part of you is still waiting for something he never gave you, and that waiting, that hole, has been running your life in ways you don't even fully see yet. I'm 84 years old. My father died in 1959. I am still in some quiet corner of myself, his son, trying to make him proud. So let me tell you what he couldn't tell you. What most fathers of his generation couldn't tell you. Not because they didn't want to, but because nobody told them either. Let me tell you about a man named Henry. It was 1963. Henry was 45 years old. He had grown up during the Depression, served in Korea, and come home to build a life with his hands and his silence. He was not a cruel man. He was not a bad man. He was a man who had survived things that required him to lock certain parts of himself away and never speak of them again. He had a son named Thomas, 12 years old, smart kid, sensitive kid, the kind of boy who drew pictures and wrote stories and felt everything twice as hard as everyone around him. Henry didn't know what to do with Thomas. He understood hard work. He understood discipline. He understood showing up and keeping your head down and not complaining. Those were the tools his father had given him, and they had kept him alive. But Thomas didn't need to survive. Thomas needed to be seen. And Henry didn't have the language for that. Nobody had ever given it to him. So Henry did what men of his generation did. He provided. He worked. He kept the roof over their heads and the food on the table, and he told himself that was love. That was enough. That was what a father did. Thomas grew up, became a man, became successful by every measure anyone could see. Good job, nice house, family of his own, and spent the next 30 years trying to fill a hole that his father's silence had carved into him. Not with bad things necessarily, with work, with achievement, with the constant, exhausting need to prove something to a man who was no longer alive to see it. I knew Thomas. We worked together for 11 years, and I watched him drive himself into the ground, chasing an approval that was never going to come. Not because his father was a bad man, but because his father was a wounded man who passed his wound on without ever knowing he was doing it. That is how it works. That is how it has always worked. Your father gave you what his father gave him, and his father gave him what his father gave him, a long, unbroken chain of men who didn't know how to say the things that needed to be said. And somewhere along that chain, the silence became your inheritance. I want to talk about what that inheritance costs you, because you are paying for it right now. Maybe you don't see it clearly, but I do. I have lived long enough to see the pattern in enough men to know exactly what it looks like. It looks like never feeling like enough no matter how much you achieve. It looks like a competitiveness that has no off switch. It looks like a difficulty receiving love, a discomfort with vulnerability, a tendency to measure your worth in productivity and results, because those were the only things that ever seemed to register with the man you needed most. It looks like working 60 hours a week and not knowing why you can't stop. It looks like being physically present with your own children, but mentally somewhere else. It looks like being Thomas. Here is what I need to tell you about your father. He was afraid, not of you, not of failure in the way you might think. He was afraid of the soft things, of the conversations that required him to open something he had spent a lifetime keeping sealed, of the vulnerability that real connection demands, because nobody had ever taught him that vulnerability was something a man could survive. He thought silence was strength. He thought providing was love. He thought showing up was enough. He was wrong, but he didn't know he was wrong. And that distinction matters more than you think. My father was a quiet man, worked in a factory for 31 years, came home tired every night, sat in his chair, read his paper, went to bed. He came to one of my baseball games in 1947, won, and I still remember exactly where he stood. Third base line, arms crossed, never cheered, just watched. I played the game of my life that day, hit a double in the 7th inning that won us the game. My teammates were screaming, my mother was crying. My father walked over to me after the game, put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Good game, Arthur. Good game." That was it. 2 words. I carried those 2 words for 40 years like they were made of gold, because they were the closest thing to "I'm proud of you" that he ever managed to say. And I didn't understand until I was well into my 60s that the reason I had worked so hard my entire life, the reason I had chased every title and every achievement with such desperate energy, was that I was still standing at that third base line, waiting for more than 2 words. I was still that boy waiting for his father to cheer. Here is what I want you to understand. Your father's silence was not a verdict on your worth. It was a symptom of his wound. The approval you never got was not withheld because you didn't deserve it. It was withheld because he didn't have it to give. You cannot give what you were never given, and he was trying to raise you with an emotional vocabulary that consisted of about 12 words, none of which were "I love you" or "I'm proud of you" or "you are enough exactly as you are." He did the best he could with what he had, and what he had was not enough. Both of those things are true at the same time. So here is the question that actually matters. Not why didn't he give me what I needed? That question has an answer, but the answer doesn't set you free. The question that sets you free is this: now that you understand where the hole came from, are you going to keep trying to fill it with the wrong things? Or are you going to do something your father couldn't do? Are you going to break the chain? Because here is what breaking the chain looks like. It does not look like being a perfect father. There is no such thing. It looks like saying "I love you" first, before it's required, before it's earned, before there's a graduation or a wedding to justify it. It looks like showing up to the game and cheering loud enough that your child can hear you specifically. It looks like sitting with your son or your daughter when they are hurting and not trying to fix it or minimize it or redirect it into something more comfortable, just sitting with it, just being there. It looks like being the man your father didn't know how to be, not because he was bad, because you know better now. And it looks like one more thing, the hardest one. It looks like forgiving him, not for his sake. He's gone, for yours. Because the anger and the grief and the waiting, those are not punishing him. They are only punishing you. They are keeping you tethered to a man who has been dead for years, still trying to get something from him that he is no longer capable of giving. Let it go. Not because he deserved forgiveness, because you deserve freedom. I forgave my father when I was 71 years old, standing at his grave 30 years after he died, talking to a headstone in a cemetery in Ohio. I told him I understood. I told him I knew he did the best he could. I told him the 2 words he gave me at that baseball game were enough, that they had to be enough, that I was choosing to let them be enough. And I wept in a way I had not wept since I was a child. Not from sadness, from relief. 30 years of carrying something I could have put down. 30 years. Don't wait 30 years. Your father couldn't tell you what you needed to hear. So I will. You are enough. You always were.